In the closing months of 1945, Indonesia was a nation in turmoil. The Japanese surrender left a dangerous power vacuum. Sukarno and Hatta proclaimed independence on the 17th of August, yet Dutch authorities prepared to return. On the ground, clashes broke out between Republican fighters and Dutch or Allied troops. A negotiated settlement seemed the only way to stop an endless war. That path led to a small mountain village in West Java, Linggadjati. Here, in late 1946, Indonesian and Dutch negotiators met to decide the future of the archipelago. The Linggadjati Agreement was shaped by pressure, hope, and deep mistrust. British mediation helped bring both sides to the table. Lord Mountbatten's Southeast Asia Command still oversaw much of the region in 1945 and 1946, and the British envoy known as Lord Killern shuttled between the parties. London's message was simple: talk, do not escalate. The United Nations had just been founded, and colonial empires were losing ground. On the Dutch side, the central figure was Lieutenant Governor General Hubertus van Mook. A seasoned administrator, he believed the Netherlands should move toward a federal Indonesia tied to Dutch interests. For him, federalism was a compromise, limited self-government for Indonesians under an overarching Dutch-Indonesian union. On the Indonesian side stood Prime Minister Sultan Syahrir. A socialist intellectual, Syahrir argued that independence should be secured through diplomacy as well as struggle. He knew international sympathy leaned toward the Republic, but he also knew the balance of force still favored the Dutch. In Linggadjati, the delegations faced each other across a simple table. The setting was green and quiet. The stakes were enormous. The Dutch wanted to restrict the Republic's reach. The Indonesians wanted recognition of their authority. After weeks of tense talks, a compromise emerged. On the 15th of November 1946, the Linggadjati Agreement was initialed. The Netherlands recognized the Republic's de facto authority over Java, Sumatra, and Madura. In return, the Republic would join a federal United States of Indonesia, alongside Dutch-sponsored states elsewhere. This new federation would be linked to the Netherlands in a Netherlands-Indonesian union, with the Dutch monarch as its symbolic head. Both the Federation and the Union were to be formed no later than the 1st of January, 1949. At first glance, it seemed a breakthrough. For the first time, the Dutch acknowledged Republican authority on major islands. For Sukarno and Hatta, diplomacy had delivered a tangible result. For Van Mook, Linggadjati pointed to a post-colonial arrangement still anchored to The Hague. Yet the ink had barely dried when criticism erupted on both sides. Dutch politicians called the deal a capitulation. Indonesian hardliners said it conceded too much by accepting federalism and a union with the Netherlands. When the Dutch parliament ratified the agreement in December, it attached interpretations that narrowed the Republic's gains. Trust never took root, and skirmishes on the ground continued. By mid-1947, Linggadjati had effectively collapsed. On 21 July, the Netherlands launched Operation Product, the first police action, a large-scale offensive on Java and Sumatra. The campaign seized key economic zones, but deepened international condemnation. The United Nations pressed for a ceasefire, leading to the Renville talks, and a fragile line of control known as the Van Mook Line. Today, Linggadjati is remembered with mixed emotions. For Indonesians, it showed both the promise and the limits of negotiating with a colonial power. For the Dutch, it marked a moment when peaceful decolonization was possible, but not chosen. The villa where the talks were held still stands as a museum in Kuningan, West Java. It is a quiet reminder of a treaty that promised peace, yet failed to secure it. In the end, Linggadjati was less about paper and signatures and more about clashing visions. It remains a symbol of a path not taken, one where sustained cooperation might have ended bloodshed, but mistrust pulled both sides back into war. Please like and subscribe to Indo Insight for more hidden stories of Indonesia and the Netherlands, stories that connect.